communication can feel like such effort if you're not on the same page.
You have to be transparent, starting with yourself. It's hard to have an open and honest communication when you're not open and honest with yourself.
It is so easy to put it on the other person and say, well, you're not communicating well, or why don't you understand me? But truth is, nearly everything begins in here.
You're having people appreciate and respect and love someone who's not you. How can you live up to something that you aren't?
I chose to instead rewrite my story from the now moment in every now moment, because anything that happened in my past is done, gone, bye.
If we really want to have true depth of relationship and connection, we want to push past that surface level. The surface level is just kind of like a nod to the ego, but true depth is a nod to the soul.
Hey, Heart Leader community, this is Amber Mikesell, and I am so excited. Silence Your Inner Critic has a release date. We'll be hitting shelves March of 2025, and you have an opportunity to get on the wait list by clicking the link below. And when you do, you're going to immediately get a gift from me. It is the Silence Your Inner Critic Starter Kit, where you'll get 13 tips to get started on silencing your inner critic before the book hits the shelves. You know, they say part of having a long-term relationship is work. And you and I have had this conversation quite often around, is it work or should it be playful and fun and engaging? And how does that roll into the things that we do to keep our relationship, whether it's our work relationship or our personal relationship, how does that roll into keeping things where we are, which is that kind of honeymoon connected phase? And when I sat and I felt through that during our time away here recently, a lot of that has to do with open and honest communication. And if we think about the work aspect that others bring into it, maybe that's when we say we don't understand it being work, that might be part of where it feels like work, right? Because communication can feel like such effort if you're not on the same page. And in a relationship, no matter what kind of relationship it is, communication is so pivotal and it's so key. And diving into just some of our own personal communication strategies and some of those that I learned as I studied communication, interpersonal and organizational communication, I think is very helpful, because I do think that it has lent to us just being so playful and joyful and happy in the connection that we've created.
I agree. One of the first things that you shared with me, which I think has been pivotal, just not only in all my relationships, but also my relationship with myself, was you have to be transparent, starting with yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be open and honest, even with yourself. That alone kind of just changed everything for me. Stop lying to myself. I didn't realize how much I was lying to myself. And so I think there opened the door for us to have open and honest communication, because I know that's something you had gone through and continue to practice, something that I had yet to really practice, and really got into it at the start of our relationship and have been honing it in, practicing it with you over the last 10 years. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to have an open and honest communication when you're not open and honest with yourself. And this is a theme through, you can probably pull that back to the root in a vast majority of the themes we talk about.
Yes. And I think that that's so key is it's so easy. I mean, we are going to say this 100,000 times as you watch our podcasts, because it is so easy to put it on the other person and say, well, you're not communicating well, or why don't you understand me? Because then it's outside of ourselves, and we feel like we can explore it easier when it's outside of self. But truth is, nearly everything begins in here. And so if we flip that script and we start to look inward for that open and honest communication where we are being transparent with ourselves, then it makes it so much easier to be open and honest in our communication with our partners because we're not afraid of being challenged when that happens. Or when our family comes at us and says, I don't understand why you made that choice. And so we get concerned and we like freeze up because we're not sure what our family is going to think of a choice or a decision we're making. If we've been open and honest with ourselves, chances are we're going to start to explore and understand that aspect. Why do I believe this? Why am I feeling this way? What can I experientially go out and start to understand about this? And then you start speaking from a place of knowledge, awareness, and experience. And open, honest communication takes a whole different route once you begin to do that.
Mhm.
But when we sit in denial within and we start to say, oh, no, I was always I was always taught not to believe this or not to feel this way, or we're just feeling that inner critic start to like and think, oh, if I feel this way, I'm going to be so different than everybody else. And so I'm going to continue to lie to myself. But our relationships are supposed to be where we can be open, honest, and playful
Mhm.
and explore. And so we really do need to go in and go, okay, what am I lying to myself about right now? What open, honest communication is not going on inside of all this?
Yeah. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Why am I lying to myself? It doesn't feel good to lie, and we can lie to ourselves about it feeling good,
Yeah.
it's just, but when we really sit with it, it's just like it doesn't feel right because it's not aligned.
Yeah.
And I know for me, like, I didn't realize how much that I was lying to myself because I wanted to protect an ego, a perception of what I wanted everyone else to see me as. And
Yeah.
man, like, I would do anything to proceed to make sure that that was upheld, at the detriment of the relationships that I had, because that was so important to me. At least that's what I was saying to myself. But even that, to a degree, was unconscious until I really brought it forward and I realized what I was doing. I was like, well, no, I don't want that. That's not actually what I desire. That's a habit. And that is what I've seen from all around me, of people attempting to, hold up that ego of themselves, that view of who they are, and position themselves as this, so that they're liked, that they're accepted, that they are appreciated, that they are loved.
Yes.
And but the problem is that what you're doing is you're having people, appreciate and respect and love someone who's not you. And so if that someone is not even you, that's not even a person, how can you live up to something that you aren't?
Yes.
And that was
Not
the
long
biggest
term.
lie. No, that was the
Yeah.
biggest lie that I saw, falter over time. When I realized that the true foundation starts from within, having that open communication, recognizing that it starts from within. It starts from releasing those lies, allowing myself to be who I am. Then from there, whenever I talk to you, then I can be transparent. Then I know, like, hey, I'm not hiding anything. So I can be free. I can be joyous.
Yes. So, what were some of the things that you did to begin to break down that deceit that you had even within yourself? Because again, sometimes we just don't even know what
Mhm.
we're lying to ourselves about because we've been lying to ourselves for so long about that very thing.
Yeah.
And so we have to begin to chip away and clear away all of the brush and the things that are covering it up to explore and understand what is true for me and how can I openly and honestly communicate that to myself,
Mm.
let alone anyone else.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the best things you did was provide me with the Power of Now book.
Yeah.
One I mean, the whole book was fantastic, still is fantastic, and it's great for anyone at any level of personal growth because it's a great starter, but it's also, I mean, you could be years and years and years down the line and be like, "Oh, yeah, I need to do that."
Go back to that again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Always good to go back to the basics because they are so foundational. But the Power of Now was so important to me because there was one part in the beginning of the book, and I believe it was when Eckhart was sitting on a park bench and he realized, he said, "I don't like myself." And he kept saying over and over again until he made that epiphany, that realization that one of those eyes or myself could change. So if it's I don't like myself, then the myself part could actually change so that I do like myself. And so that really hit home for me. I realized that the ego that I was presenting, that which I was sharing and I wanted everyone else to see me as, which wasn't actually me, and it wasn't actually even who I wanted to be. It was who I thought I wanted everyone else wanted me to be. Hopefully that tracks.
Who I thought, they
Yeah,
thought, I
that's
thought.
yes.
Yeah.
Goes back to
And the spiral continues, but that's
yes,
what happens,
yes, like
right?
in dodgeball.
Yeah.
We watched that on our break. But yeah, it's amazing how much that freed me up because I was like, wow, I'm spending all this time and all this energy attempting to be someone that I am not, under the guise that I think that that's what everyone else who wants me to be. And the reality is a lot of my relationships were crumbling, or they were faulty, or they were faulty is not the right. They were false.
Yeah.
It
Well, they
just
were
wasn't.
built on a faulty foundation.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so when I realized that the I, which is it's just the foundation, that strength, the real, the true heart in me, and then myself is maybe my thoughts and my perception. That well, I can change my thoughts and my perception to align with the I, the foundational, the uh, unbreakable I. And when those two align, and then I can finally say, I don't only just, it's not like I just like myself. I love myself. And when I got to that point, that's when the transparency and the openness went to a whole other level.
I agree. I fortunately had the opportunity to navigate to that space prior to meeting you. But I had a similar journey of needing to break down all of that which I had created as my story, right? That's what I looked at it as. This is my story that I have created for myself. But it was all based on fiction versus fact. And so I needed to begin to look at, all right, what are the true facts of my day to day, where I'm at now, not what happened in the past? Because the past, when you talk about the power of now, right? The past influenced where I'm at now, and it has brought me to this point, but I'm not experiencing it now. And so if I continue to build my entire story around that past experience, then I'm just going to keep reliving that. And the lies or the experiences I had are just going to keep following me into the present moment. I chose to instead rewrite my story from the now moment in every now moment, looking at facts of who I am in this now moment, where I desire to be in my next now moment, and use that as my, I guess, if you will, my building criteria for the choices I was making in those now moments. So it made me feel so empowered to not have to lie to myself because anything that happened in my past is done, gone, poof, bye. Yes, I still feel it, but I don't give it dominion over me. The next step was to tear all that story down and build it every now moment by every now moment so that I could share from where I am right now. And if you ask me about something that happened in the past, I can share from that I perspective versus that myself perspective
Mhm.
that you're talking about. I don't have to be ashamed of anything I did in the past because the I that I am now is not that past I. So if I'm talking to you and you ask me about a choice I made 10 years ago, it's a choice I made 10 years ago. Who I am now would not make that same choice.
Mhm.
So why am I embarrassed about that?
Mhm.
I have grown so much between that stage. I've grown so much just this year alone,
Yeah.
let alone all of that journey. So, by being able to look at it in every present moment and craft my inner dialogue based on that, then I didn't feel a need to be dishonest with myself or anyone else any longer,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's amazing how freeing that is.
Yeah.
You know, if again, back to the start, if we're not willing to be free and open with ourselves, then we just can't be that with anyone else around us. So if we really want to have true depth of relationship and connection, we want to push past that surface level. The surface level is just kind of like a nod to the ego, but true depth is a nod to the soul.
Yes.
And so when we can get out of our own way, recognize and feel that authentic soul self within, and align that with who, you know, with our thoughts, with our actions, then the byproduct is joy. The byproduct is freedom.
Yes.
And then when you start communicating in that way, it just strengthens, it compounds, and that's what we have built over the last 10 years with our communication. We're not hiding anything. We even any of the most embarrassing things or, the vulnerability of it, it helps. It's like, wow, thank you for uncovering that with me. And there are times, like, don't get me wrong, like there are times when I might be experiencing something or you might be, and you didn't even realize it. It's not like you were attempting to hold something back from me. It's
Or
part of,
lie,
yeah,
or
or
be
lie.
deceitful in any way.
Exactly, part of it is when you do have a partner, or this could be with your family members, or maybe a sibling or parents, or family, or even coworkers, like to have this depth of communication and connection, you know to be there in a support system where you can uncover that together and feel safe through that process. I mean, what a blessing. What an incredible blessing that is.
Yes. And I feel strongly that the reason I was prepared to assist you in your journey into open and honest dialogue within was because I had navigated the path.
Mhm,
The difference between being a guide who's walked the path and been there and like, oh, yeah, I know what that felt like.
mhm,
So I can hold space for that
mhm,
because I know you're tearing away at your ego and your ego doesn't like that.
mhm,
So it's going to do everything it can to defend itself.
mhm,
You're shutting down and silencing your inner critic. It doesn't like that. It's going to do everything it can to make certain that you don't take that next step or that you don't continue to be in that present moment. But being able to navigate that journey, then hold space for you as you navigated it because I understood where you were very different experiences, approaches, everything was very different for us, but at least I understood. And as you started to communicate with me, I didn't take it personally toward me. And I could say, I get it. Here's where I'm at. And here's my boundary
mhm,
around this. And so, understanding my boundary and where you are, let's openly communicate about that
mhm,
and take the next steps that take us even deeper into the relationship
mhm.
versus, okay, you're on your own journey. Good luck because I can't connect with or relate to or understand. what you're going through. And I feel like that's a huge part of it as well. Even if we don't, had I not gone on that journey before you, and then you decided to go on the journey,
Mhm.
something we have done where
Mhm.
you've done things before I have.
Mhm.
At no point have either one of us ever said, don't do that, because that's the open and playfulness that we're talking about. We communicate, this is what I'm doing. This is why it's important to me
Mhm.
on my journey. Now let's talk about how it impacts you on your journey. So then it does go outward from that space of, I know me. I know why this is important to me. I've done the action of really aligning myself and understanding, even if it's experientially, why this is important to me. Now I'm sharing it with you. I want to hear from you what that does for you.
Mhm.
Where does that bring you? Because I'm not in this in a bubble and it's not all about my experience. But let's talk it out now and let's figure out what that next step is. And that might cause me, and it has, to go, oh, wait a second, that just triggered me a little bit. I don't know what to do with this. Can I just have a moment to feel through so that I don't continue to lie to myself or to you saying, oh, it's okay. And I support you in this if I didn't.
Mhm.
And so taking that time to say, I need a moment now. You've made a realization. I need a moment now to figure out what that does for me.
Mhm.
And you holding space while I do that. So important.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah. That's beautiful. And it's such a blessing that we get to experience that with each other. I think it's because oftentimes um, open and honest communication is somewhat viewed as like as an opportunity and maybe even to a degree an excuse to just trauma dump on someone,
Yeah.
right? And so, what you just talked about is a collaboration versus a one-sided relationship, right? And so when someone says, "Hey, I want you to be open and honest," it doesn't mean, "Hey, let me throw all my stuff on you and then you have to deal with it now." That's not what we're talking about here. True open and honest communication is a collaboration, and that's what you just beautifully did a step by step through of like, hey, this is we share where we're at. We understand, okay, it's affecting me. How is it affecting you? And then how does that interact with our usness?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know how else to
With
say it
our
other
ussy.
with our ussy. Yes, exactly. Instead of selfies, it's ussies. Yeah, with our usness, and it's so important. I mean, the more that we do as in a partnership, in a romantic partnership like we have, knowing that it is individually experienced, but it's also collectively experienced.
Yes.
And so when we can have that in a really safe environment, then that can help us take that and replicate it out into the world, in different ways, right? Because the relationship that you and I have with each other is different than what I have with everyone else in terms of all the exact ways it's expressed. But the base foundation is the same because I'm the same, you're the same, we are the same. And then we bring that into the rest of all of our relationships with our family, our friends, and workers, strangers, anything that we do. And that's what's so beautiful about it.
I agree. And it's important to keep revisiting that foundation
Mhm.
as you talked about the power of now. Such an amazing book to start. But as you said, also an amazing book to keep revisiting and revisiting,
Mhm.
because it's like any skill that we learn. We think we've got it. And then if we think about riding a bike, it takes me like a second after I haven't ridden a bike for a little while to kind of get my balance back. It's the same with anything that we've acquired and we've put into our toolbox. If we haven't picked it up for quite a while, then it's really nice to go back and get a refresher for a moment and then go, oh, yeah, I do remember that. Oh, yeah. Okay. Just kind of bringing that back to front of heart, front of mind. I'm good to go now. Refreshers golden. Let's pivot and get back to it.
Mhm.
And the more that we're willing to do that and not think, well, I've already been there, I've already done that. I don't need to go backward. That's going backward.
Mhm.
We accept that there's no such thing as backward and forward and up and down. There's just movement,
Mm.
right? And we move wherever we need to in that moment to get to where we desire in the next moment. And if that means that I revisit a bunch of tools that I've already acquired to have a refresh, that's an amazing experience. If that means that you and I both go back to basics because we've gotten to a point where we're not as open and honest with each other as we once were. Not that this has happened at all, but should we get there, we're both willing to say, okay, let's go back to what got us here before.
Mhm.
And yes, maybe we'll need to add to it. But for now, that will be a starting point because we know it helped us get here once. So let's revisit that for this moment and see where it takes us into the next.
Mm. Absolutely.
So, open and honest communication can feel like work, but it can also feel like play
Mhm.
if we come at it from that strategic, if I could say that word.
Intentional.
I like that better.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we come at it from that intentional standpoint and we give each other the space to not be perfect.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's, again, that goes back to a collaboration, is that when you're viewing it from a learning perspective, that it's not a personal attack. If something that we're going through or something that we are experiencing or whatever I say to you, and this can kind of go back to one of our most recent previous podcasts, like, you know, view it from the intent as like starting from a good intent,
Mhm.
right? Like it's like, hey, it's a base good intent. Like she's not here, she's my partner. She's been with me for 10 years. She's not here to be vindictive or, to lash out or attack me. And same with me. That's how, I'm not there to hurt her in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So if we are being open and vulnerable, there are moments where we might be feeling something. Like we feel like going through, ego, like breaking down your ego. Oh man, it feels there's a lot of internal things that go on. You might even feel frustration or anger or sadness, and but it had nothing to do with you, and vice versa. And as we keep shaping who we are by aligning ourselves with our soul selves, as we unveil and uncover who we are through this experience of life, to do that with someone who doesn't take it personal and recognizes like, hey, you know, I, I can see you're kind of going through something, can we talk about it? And then how can I learn from that? What are you doing that could help me?
Yes.
What a talk about intention, right?
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Curiosity is to me one of the greatest gifts I have.
Yeah.
Free choice, free will, curiosity, all of these things just assist us so much.
Yeah. That's play.
Yeah.
That's joyfulness. And that's what to me, that's what keeps me in a space of open and honest and communication, is because it is light. It is freeing. The moment it feels like, in the beginning stages when I was kind of going back and forth, like anytime that, I would like, oh, I go want to go back into an old habit, like I felt like, ugh, like it just everything just like I felt like a weight was on my shoulder. Like I felt like it was just terrible. And then when I talk through it with you, I just like, oh, okay, I feel so much better. And so like, why do the back and forth? Why not just stay in that light, in enjoyment and that, like that joy and that bliss and that truth?
Yes.
That's what we are all seeking, and it's what we know is natural. And it's usually we're just getting in our own way. And so part of this practice of being open and honest in your communication to yourself and to those around you is a beautiful way to get back to your natural state, to, as we were talking about earlier, giving that nod to your soul self and then allowing your heart and your mind to align.
Yes. And even in those moments where either one of us are breaking through a new part of our ego. And there might be frustration. There may be, maybe we don't even understand why we're feeling what we're feeling,
Mhm.
but it's just like, "Ah." It's quite easy for either one of us to think, oh, did I do something to upset the other person? And you and I have gone through this so often where maybe we don't even know why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. I mean, good Lord, we're in bodies that do all kinds of fun, interesting things. And, then there's the outside work, there's all kinds of things. And then on top of all of that, we're consistently doing internal growth and exploration because we desire to have these tools that we know fit before we share out somewhere else. So we're constantly chiseling down even further and further and further. So when we have those moments, and I can feel the frustration coming from you,
Mm.
or you can feel the anxiousness coming from me, we go back to the assuming positive intent and we start to ask each other questions. I start to ask you, are you okay? Which can come off, I know, to some people, like, I'm presuming that you're not okay. Every person can have their own dialogue that helps them understand, but we consistently seek to understand, is everything okay in this moment? Is there anything that I have done that is creating this feeling in you? Can you share with me exactly how you're feeling? Versus where even I started out sometimes, which was, I'm telling you how you feel,
Mm.
because I was observing your nonverbal communication and your tone, your demeanor, and then the words that you were choosing to use. And I would say, you're acting like I've frustrated you. You're feeling frustrated and I don't understand why. Are you okay? And it would just feed. You weren't frustrated before, but suddenly you became frustrated because I told you that you were feeling frustrated, which was not fair on my part. So that gave me an opportunity to learn to ask open ended questions, such as, are you okay? How are you feeling? Is there anything that I have done that is causing this feeling within you? And then that allows you to drill down and go, huh, I don't know this, or this is what is coming up for me. But then it starts a dialogue versus me telling you how you feel.
Mhm. Right. One of the keys to emotional management is emotional clarity. You can't really get clarity without questions. And
Yeah,
so that was so beautiful and such a beautiful practice that we continue. And at first it led to some interesting conversations,
it did.
but over time it's become, s- you know, uh, I don't want. I mean, efficient might be the word, but it seems like a lack of emotionality to
Yeah,
it,
lack of connection.
because it's more than that. And we've talked about this in other podcasts too, where it's like the better you get at things, things just take less time. It doesn't mean that they're less valuable or less quality.
Yeah.
It's, in fact, to me, it's more. It's kind of the opposite. It's like, hey, you've just gotten better at it, so you can move through things. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just when we ask each other those questions, now it's because the assuming positive intent is just baked in, and because we're both learning and growing from each other, then the questions aren't immediately. It doesn't feel like a personal attack or a hit, or that either of us is telling us how each other are feeling or acting. It's information,
Mhm.
which is one of the things that you talk about. Emotions are information. And it's so true. And until we allow ourselves to view it as information and stop letting those emotions control us, that we can use it to help support and provide a space like open and honest communication, then we can utilize what we're feeling as a tool to support and enhance a very conscious and connected relationship.
Yes. Choosing where to start is very important too,
Yeah.
as you reflected. Like, you may not get to where we are. I mean, we're 10 years in, having navigated being mentors, mentor mentee, then friends, and then being able to fall in love with best friends, right?
And
It
now
just,
fiancés.
and now fiancés. Yes, I
Yes.
this happened just over the past week. So,
Yay.
yes, for 10 years.
Yay.
Yay. So now, even a different level of connection and exploration and excitement
Mhm.
going into it. So, I have often compared myself when I'm just coming out of the gate for a new skill or a new approach to those who are so far ahead of me and have been doing it for quite some time. Then my inner critic kicks in and goes, "But you'll never be that good. Why aren't you that good right now?" Because I haven't had that many years of journeying, experiencing, learning, gaining all of this amazing connection and experience that comes with that. But the inner critic doesn't want me to know that. So it just goes, "Nee, why aren't you that good?" So, for anyone who is listening to this or watching us, it is so important to remember we've navigated so many levels of our relationship, and we have been conscious and connected through each one, choosing, okay, this seems to be an area where we could grow together. So let's explore individually, then come together and see how we can grow and learn and explore more together based on that. So pick the starting point in any relationship you're in, and then come at it from that space of conscious communication and not blame and accusation or telling someone how they feel.
Mhm.
Because let me tell you, that does not work.
No, that's beautiful. I think that's such a great way to view open and honest communication, and recognize that to a degree, open and honest communication is a byproduct of everything that you just said. And so when we say here's, the reason why we didn't say here, like, 5 steps to doing this, it's like, well, there are just so many. You can't sit here and say there are only 5 things or there are only 3 things or anything like that. It's like, no, there are literally 1,000 ways we can do this, but there are some core foundational aspects, and I think we definitely just touched on a piece of them, but they overlap, and that's
Mhm.
the tough part, and that's why we're talking about all these different topics and showing how they overlap, so we can bring, as you're talking about, what is conscious relationship. It means being conscious of the actions that you're taking, right? And having more intention. And so we can start to see from that 30,000 foot view, like, here's all the overlap and here's how it's affecting each aspect. And then when you start to become more clear and intentional and aligned, then it kind of all falls into place. And the byproduct is that you get things like the beauty and the joy and the experience of open and honest communication.
Absolutely. Sounds like an amazing place to wrap up so they can explore other aspects of our podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you'd like to explore other things that we're doing, check out silenceyourinnercritic.com. Amber has written an incredible book all about how to silence your inner critic, written from this beautiful comic book lore. And while weaving in these incredible tips and tools and stories, and as you can see, we have a little bit of a comic book flow, but it really starts to help you understand that the inner critic is not just something that's fighting you, but it's in many ways a part of you. It's not something that you kill off, but it can help enhance you. And so we are launching this book in March of 2024, but you can join the waitlist now. You can get this great PDF with 13 tips on how to silence your inner critic. So you can get started today on that, fighting against that inner critic, and knowing that it's not going to control you, and you can feel really empowered through the process. Go to silenceyourinnercritic.com. The link is in our our description and join the waitlist, and we'll tell you all about everything that's coming up here. There's so much exciting news. And if you really enjoyed today's podcast, go ahead and explore some more right here.